Oh, shoot. Oh.
Hi, Jess. Did you mean to mute me?
I did not. That was an accident. I am very sorry.
Wow. Okay. Well, as I was saying, I am honored to welcome our guest, Dorian Wood, this evening. And once again, we're fortunate to have Castles with us this evening for an insightful introduction. So over to you, Castles.
Thank you, Holly. I will now introduce my dear friend and this incredible artist, Dorian Wood. I first met Dorian, and I think it was 2010, in a dank, dark warehouse in downtown Los Angeles. I had just performed a piece called Hard Times, which is a super weird live work, which had me teetering on a plank of wood about 7 feet in the air, wearing a frosted blonde wig, a coral body thong, and a deep tan, fake tan of a bodybuilder. I also had this like terrifying prosthetic mask, which simulated the eyes had rotted out of my head. That evening, I heard Dorian before I saw them, and the strength, tremor, and emotional full Nelson of their vocals was paired against this brass band cacophony of the Los Angeles-based experimental orchestra called Kilsonic. In lieu of being paid that evening, the curator's boyfriend, who happened to be a young, talented chef, used the proceeds from the door sales to host this banquet. It's a gorgeous meal post-performance. And along this makeshift table strewn with flowers, I looked over at Dorian and thought, this is the diva I've been waiting for. WNYC Culture says that Dorian is, quote, armed with the vocal charisma that would befit a preacher and an experimental streak that would make an avant-gardist swoon. A wonderkind with a headstrong DIY discipline, Dorian has brought their emotionally charged performances to concert halls, museums, music venues, performance spaces throughout the US, Mexico, and Europe. Dorian delivers vocals that offer sublime beauty and pain. They channel the skill and ferocity of such auteurs such as Scott Walker, Janet Jackson, Chavela Vargas, and Nina Simone. Through the use of their corpulent body and booming voice, Wood revels in the challenging the artist-audience separation, using subject matter informed by their own position in society as a non-binary person of color and an autodidact. Their work has been showcased in concert halls and performance spaces around the world, including institutions such as the Broad here in Los Angeles, Red Cat, the Stone, Mass Gallery, the Kunsthaus in Stockholm, Hebel am Ufter in Berlin. As a musician, they have released over a dozen recordings, amongst them back-to-back albums, Rattle, Rattle and Down, Dirty Roof, showcasing a series of doomsday-themed songs that incorporate over 60 musicians. Their album, Exhala, marks the first time that Wood has recorded a full-length work in their mother tongue of Spanish, and Wood's Chavela Vargas tribute project, Exhala, oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna mispronounce this, Exhala Lux Afterna, debuted at the Festival Arte Sacro in Madrid. They are a 2020 Creative Capital Fellow and the voice behind In Plain Sight's X-Max video. They're also a secret midnight drawer and a queer keeper of fierce light, which only a true torch singer can bear. So thank you so much, Dorian, for being here tonight. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Castles. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I am incredibly honored to be here today. And I know in several introductions that you've probably heard in the past, there's always a reference to the times that we're living in, and despite the times that we're living in, and all these things. So I'll spare you of that, but I really haven't because I brought it up. My name is Dorian Wood. As my dear friend Castles pointed out, I was born in LA, and I've been doing all sorts of things since I was a kid. And that's just really not a way of oversimplifying what it is that I do, but rather just really speaking from a very earnest place. I believe I've fallen in with what they consider the wrong crowd, which is artists and activists and just creators in general. And I'm extremely honored to be part of so many different communities. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to give you all reference points as far as where I've been and Who knows where I'm going? Who knows where any of us are going? But here we are, and I'm going to give you like a little presentation here as far as where I've been, and I ask for your patience in how I'm still really trying to figure out the tech aspects of presenting through Zoom. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is take over the screen at this point. And let's see if I can open chat at the same time. This is, it's such an exciting time to be alive and explore new things like opening chat at the same time as bringing up a PowerPoint presentation. It's the little things, as they say. So, okay. And here we go. Alrighty. So this is me. This is actually a photo that I, in case you were all wondering, this is of course me. A photo that I actually had taken roughly about a month ago. So this is a very recent photograph. And just, before we go full on into this, I want to let you know that, as I started like in a very informal way of, referring to the things that I do or doing all sorts of things, I also wanted to really come across as just really from someone who, I consider myself an artist, but I'm really just more like just, a person who's fallen in with several crowds and has just been learning to embrace several circumstances that lead me to different places in my life. They all happen to be creative. And in these instances, there are many places to laugh, and there's humor, and certainly in life and certainly in things that I've done. There's also this extreme seriousness. So if you feel like laughing at certain points, it is completely appropriate to laugh. Any other emotion that you feel, most likely completely appropriate as well. So I'm 45, and this entire time I've really tried to stray away from defining anything that I do as this or that. But I think once you get to be a certain age, in my theory anyway, I think there are words that I like to associate with what it is that I do. And there's 4 that have been coming to mind more recently, which is change, objection, color, and kindness. And as I move forward with my little presentation, I'll just bounce around these words and just give you examples of what I mean by each one. Some of them are more literal than others, and some of these words are interchangeable, and that to me is just very much a reflection of the dear nuance of life. So I was born in 1975. I wish I still had this pink outfit. There is room for resentment in my family that they have not custom sewn this outfit so it can fit me throughout every age, because I think it's just so darling and it looks very comfortable. But as you can see, I was always a very masculine baby by society standards. But this is how they dressed me, so this is what they got. This is my grandfather, Calasanz Alvarez. He was born in Nicaragua, and he married a Costa Rican woman. And he was a very successful session pianist in Costa Rica. So one day he moved the entire family to the States, and he wanted to make it as a musician in the jazz scene, first in New York and then in LA. But unfortunately, it wasn't able for him to make a living to support his family. So he had to take a job as a mail clerk at USC, the University of Southern California, where he worked for approximately 35 years until his retirement. During this time, he was still playing gigs here and there, and then when I was born, I seemed to show this ease in picking up the piano. So he started teaching me piano at a very early age, and I did my very first piano recital at age 5. And look at her. Look at her. She is terrified to be there. At this point, I was very much a he. I was very much a very nervous, chubby little boy who was just genuinely terrified of being there. And yet I did it. Like, I was 5 years old, and I got through my little recital. I made it official with the little bow. Those shoes, I remember very clearly, were extremely uncomfortable, which really added to just the overall tension of everything. But that said, I'm grateful of being able to get over stage fright at such an early age. And this was actually a recital at USC. This was thanks to the influence of my grandfather that he got me in there. So when it comes to music, he is definitely the one that I attribute that direction to. Overall, though, with my creativity and just really like my identity as an artist, I do attribute that to my mother. My mother is Vilma Alvarez, an incredibly creative and just giving person with her knowledge and with her love, and always encouraged me to find what it is that I loved and just to go after that. And she just really encouraged me embracing the things that made me distinct from others. And I was such an awkward kid, and she was so embracing of that, and she just really just pushed me to go for it. And in her incredible wisdom and her generosity with her wisdom, there was this one thing that she gave me that I really pair with my creativity to this very day, which I've found to be an essential part of the creative direction that I've gone in, but also just a very important survival tool, which is mischief. I think that is something almost indescribable that I have inherited from my mother. This, like, I guess when we go back to the words that I began with, this is the color. And color in that a situation that can be very just structured and normative, to dare to be the color in that situation. The thing that is a little off, but that is a little sly, a little playful. I must have been like 7 here, maybe, at the oldest, and I'm already finding my angle and my purpose in life. So thank you, Mom. I was, as I mentioned before, not a masculine child at all. I was extremely effeminate. And this is something that has always fascinated me about what's considered Latinx culture, is that there tends to be a very prevalent anti-femme, anti-gay, anti-queer, anti-trans sentiment in the culture universally, but there's also a protectiveness of boys who are effeminate in several circumstances, especially when they prove to be creative for some reason. I have no idea why. God, she loved posing for a camera, though. Look at her. And here, I want to just grab those cheeks and assure this beautiful little person that the road is going to be extremely difficult in trying to figure out, who it is that you are or why you are on this earth. What is your purpose, and who are you in this purpose? I look at this photo, though, as I now identify as a non-binary person, as really just the most representative of who I was as a child, who I felt so empowered in this moment, but this was only in the context of me being alone in this photo. If I were ever paired with with another child of of the same age, then all of a sudden I would see how awkward I dressed, how different I looked, and how I was, for so much of my life, trying to battle against the idea that different is bad. And this is my high school yearbook photo. I went to high school at a high school of the arts in Costa Rica called Conservatorio de Castella. And I was there 4 years. When my parents split up, my mom moved us to Costa Rica, so I got to go to this really prestigious high school of the arts, and I really made like just so many wonderful friends, like genuine friends whom I'm still friends with, like 25 plus years later. And I look at this photo, and this is really just someone who, again, was in their own way trying to fit in, to conform to being with someone, but at the same time finding it just too easy to just embrace this this neither this nor that, and just somehow like just fantasizing about being this indescribable creature. At the time, I didn't know what non-binary meant, and of course I had a fat body, and not a whole lot of fat people in Costa Rica, not certainly my body type. So it was tough. It was a tough time. And this was also where I learned to blossom as an artist. At this point, I was studying theater, and I had put music on the side just because I felt that I just wanted to express myself more physically, more visually. So then I graduated high school, and several identity crises later, I reached full-on adulthood. And this was like me in my early 20s, just prying open the the chasm, like in front of me, and finding a chasm within the chasm that I could just make my own niche. And this is when I started getting out there, embracing music again, but from a very visual, semi-theatrical, performative standpoint. At the time, I wasn't really even defining myself as a performance artist. If I had to really adhere to a label at this age, oddly enough, it was folk artist. I fancied myself a folk musician. I thought that what I was doing was folk music, and of course, you see this photo, and it's, why would you not think that? But this somehow made sense in my head. So at the time, I started performing at gay bars all over LA, and this is just really where I cut my teeth. I was just really making songs up, sometimes on the spot, sometimes from the night before, songs about people that I knew, songs about getting drunk the week before, and just making an ass out of myself, and songs of just being angry for being so damn queer and punk, and just flinging my fists in the air and not knowing who to hit, so I would just write a song about it. And sometimes without makeup, and other times with, and to me it was just really part of the same universe, and it still just somehow makes sense to me that it would be, even though we're so accustomed to making distinctions and different labels, like different jars for each of our own mystery ingredients. But this was just me just trying to embrace it all as just coming from the same beast. And really just like, I want to do this today, and I'm going to invite two of my friends, so like one who plays tuba, the other one plays saxophone, and I made up this track, and let's just do this song that's like 35 minutes long. So this was just really my creative direction. It was from one day to the next, and and it was just a really exciting time to be in my 20s, just really feeling the release of having to adhere to something, and instead creating like this, this underbelly of who I've been, and daring to thrive just doing that, and looking back at the documentation and being like, yeah, of course, this is a folk artist. This is folk music. I'm wearing a Loretta Lynn t-shirt because that says to you, this is folk music. This is alt country. I am an alt country artist. I don't know why it is that I kept embracing that label in my mind. I think it's because maybe at the time I was, and really even now, like I was so in admiration of folk artists and folk music. There was just this primal quality that I always identified with, this freedom that you can take any song and evolve it and make it your own. And that type of sensibility is one that I've always identified with, where nothing is sacred, where you can take any song and make it your own, and then that version becomes part of history. And that's really what I wanted to do at the time, and in many ways what I still aim to do in all levels of my creativity. But this here is, an example of me just, I wouldn't say figuring things out, but just really more like letting creativity just pour out like a nice warm diarrhea. I, for a short while, developed an alter ego, just feeling that it might be more practical and getting people to come out to more shows, and knowing that I can sometimes do something more conventional, just me on piano, and then other times this sort of fair. So I created a persona called Faggot Tree. 2 words, faggot and tree. By the way, this presentation contains adult situations, language, and nudity. So Faggot Tree just was, usually wore like the makeup and, layers of prosthetics sometimes. And at the time, this was like the most nudity I'd ever exhibited in the flesh, so to speak. I let my skirt fall, and oops, you can see my legs and my boxers. And that to me was just such a big, bold move in pushing forward with my self-confidence. At the time, by the way, like, whatever impression I may be giving, I was extremely insecure, and kind of terrified of everything, but just kind of going along with whatever any situation called for. And as I mentioned, there is there's an aspect of humor with what I've done. I see it more really as absurdity, and there's something very sacred in that, in daring to laugh at something that is so beneath us or perceived as being beneath us, and having that be a defiance. Coming back to like the color. It is like, just it's being the color in a potentially bland situation. And this was a performance I did at Highways Performance Space in Santa Monica. And it is what I called it was a panic poem. And it was supposed to make you feel uncomfortable, but I also got everybody chanting the word caca in a very melodic way. And this was probably the most epic thing I'd ever done. I entered the stage dragging this long train of guts and a toilet seat, because she was subtle like that. Shortly after that, I fell in with another wrong crowd, which was, as Castles had mentioned, this experimental ensemble called Kill Sonic. And they had heard about what I'd been doing for years, just this weird what the fuckery of like, just, very present, very, bold, colorful stage performances. And they invited me to join their ensemble, and I told them I didn't really play any mobile instruments. So they asked me, do you play accordion? And I'm like, no. They're like, can you learn it? I'm like, sure. So I taught myself accordion, and this was actually one of the first shows that I did with them, and I had my keyboard here. But it was we were a 30-member ensemble at our biggest size, and I all of a sudden realized that it is possible to fall in love with 30 people at the same time, and that feeling is unparalleled. I felt like I had just won every single award being with Killsonic, and I was with them for maybe like about 3 4 years. But during that time, there were just so many enchanting moments that we created, and so much of it was just the acceptance of, of no longer really being like, just the outsider, no longer being the one, like, that was just forging their own way through life, with defiance after defiance. It was just being in this wonderful 30-member orgy of, of 100% defiance, and that's what fed us. And we fed each other with, ways in how we could be defiant with this world, just really just sucking the marrow out of the punk bone. And we hit the streets. We were mostly like, street ensemble, and we would just really hit the streets and show up uninvited to places. We even did a tour of the metro line, the red line in Los Angeles, and we just hit every single station. And we got permits for that, which was the most sophisticated thing we had done at that point. So it was just really like it was really an example of how I had just fallen into a situation, from just feeling what I wanted to do, and being embraced for that, and I felt so grateful for that, and just almost like in awe of it, and realizing that, well, that is really like a self-esteem thing, because I should be just happy with what comes out of me naturally, and not have to seek the approval of others in an ideal world. But the ideal world is what we make of it. So in doing this, I was just really still that awkward gay boy who just did weird things until, and it just really just kept, meeting all these just wonderful people in my trajectory. And one of those people that Castles mentioned was the curator, in which Castles and I met many years ago, the curator Dino Dinko. And Dino saw something in me that I hadn't seen before, which was physical beauty, the potential for expressing my physical beauty in a way that didn't require me dressing it up with prosthetics or with makeup or with, whatever I had lying around the house. Most of these objects, by the way, that I would just throw on my body and my face were things that I got in a thrift store or picked up in the street, or that, Trix would leave behind in my house. And I'm like, oh, cute, this could go on my head. So so Dino was, just, a curator, a filmmaker, an artist, and asked if he could direct a video for me for one of my songs, a song called Pianos and Bricks. And he asked if I would be comfortable being nude in it. And I, at the time, thought it was just, near preposterous. Like, why would I ever want to do that? Show my nude body to thousands of people. Why would I want to do that? That's not who I am. I'm not there yet. But he showed me that I could be. So Pianos and Bricks was my introduction to my own body in a way that I had never seen it before or felt it before. So I'd love to share the video of Pianos and Bricks with you. So this is the part where I say again, bear with me to see how I'm like, so I'm not doing this right. Stop share, maybe. Oh, hi, everyone. So I am going to share a link with you in the chat for the video Pianos and Bricks, if you'd like to take a look at it. And once you do, if you want to just like kind of give me a thumbs up right here, and I'll know that you've seen it, and we'll continue. And thank you so much for being here so far.
What do you think?
Okay, so it looks like several of you have already seen it, and thank you. So, if it's cool, we can continue with. All right. So, yeah, so Pianos and Bricks, that was, it seemed like so many moons ago. And once I got to that point, it was just really that same intoxicating feeling I got when I joined Killsonic. Just all of a sudden, like, this new portal just opened up to me, like, of possibility of this new creative freedom that felt oddly like self-confidence that I had not been used to my entire life. So then that's when performance art started happening. And this right here is shortly after Pianos and Bricks. Dino curated this event called Gutted, and that was another event that I did with Castles. And there were just all these performance pieces happening simultaneously in this space called Lace in Hollywood. And for approximately 5 hours, I drank water and I urinated into bottles that were later hung like in front of me, like in a circle in the space. And then at the 5th hour, the women that were sitting around me, my friends, they got up and they started singing to the urine being released into these tin buckets and to the sound that they were making. I'm sad there's no video documentation of that, because the sounds in that space, along with 2 saxophonists from Killsonic that came out to perform, the sounds overall were quite magnificent. I was really just so proud and so happy that that I was able to do something like this. This was really like my first ever fully like labeled performance piece. And so shortly after that, I got this grant through Lace to do this this other piece, and this was a more ambitious piece even when I brought back the character of faggotry, and I wanted to really, it was called Athko, or the Renaissance of Faggotry. And that was a 3-hour performance installation that was out in a park here in LA. And like faggotry at this point didn't wear any makeup or anything, but it was just really like, the Renaissance, meaning that I was getting rid of that moniker once and for all, but that this is just who I was, and I could be faggotry whether I wanted to or not. And I performed here with members of Kill Sonic. So this was in a tent, but for in order for people to reach this tent, they had to go through a pathway that had dozens of people lying face down on the ground, each one embodying a different figure from the history of punk and performance art in LA from the late 70s to early 80s. And each person had a guide that would tell them about who each person was. Like right here at the forefront is the legendary performance artist Johanna Wendt, who's actually, that's not actually her, but that's who she is representing. So this was how, I went from not being confident in my own body to all of a sudden just exploding all over the place. And I've never looked back. So during this time, as I was really coming into my own as a performance artist, I was still recording music and touring. And in 2013, I put out my album Rattle Rattle. As Castles mentioned, it was an album that had like 60 members, like 60 musicians. I was thinking really just big, and it was really more just an excuse to work with people whom I loved. Just feeling so intoxicated in such a positive way, being surrounded by people who embraced me for who I was. And how telling was that of how not like immediately accepted I was as a kid in doing what I did. And for once feeling like, an outsider in a community of outsiders. And I was touring, performing Rattle Rattle, and it somehow took me to Spain and to several cities in Europe. And I just really, all of a sudden, developed more of a name out there. Specifically Spain. I kept going back there. Since 2014, I'd been going back to Spain at least twice a year to tour. And what happens is, like, when you perform so much and when you just, become, when you just allow yourself to be who you are and who you're becoming and don't show any restraint with that, people notice in interesting ways. As Dino noticed something about me I hadn't seen about myself before. People notice like something, another possibility with my body, which was like either as a canvas. My artist friend Arancha used me as a canvas during one of my tours in Spain. I remember being really hungover when this was done, and I just stood there for like 3 hours getting this done on my body. But I'm living the dream, and I'm about to vomit, but it was also really cold. And here I was being a canvas in a really like just non-ironic way. Actually, somebody saw something beautiful there. So I was becoming all of a sudden this muse. This was a photographer, Peter Hunneman, in Hamburg, after a show I did in Hamburg, Germany, covered me in this copper paint and wanted to photograph me as the Venus of Willendorf. And first asked me if I would be offended by that, and I just laughed. I'm like, how could I possibly be offended, to be compared with such a magnificent, piece of, of human history as the Venus of Willendorf. And at this point, really coming to terms with I was beautiful because not only because I was fat, but including my fatness, and that was okay. And how my weight has always fluctuated. So it's trying to find your own beauty during all of this. But going from me just really being a model to, like, as I mentioned before, being a muse. Like, here is a mural that my friend Román Linacero, who lives in Madrid, did of me. And this is an enormous mural. This was shortly after we'd met, after my first tour in Spain. He surprised me with this mural, and I was just, I was like blown away. I had no idea he was doing this. But you know, 20 years ago, you would have asked me if, you know, this would have been a possibility, and I would have laughed. I'm like, there's absolutely no way my body could ever be showcased in this way. My body was always something to be ashamed of, is how I was accustomed to seeing my own body. So with this new self-confidence, something started happening to my music and the way I performed it. And this was like around the time that Rattle Rattle came out. So I started realizing that any situation that I created, any space that I created with others, or, you know, or for myself, had to just be larger than life, because that was just really the right amount of space for everything that I'd had pent up in me for so long. So here's another video I'd like to share with you. This one is from a performance that we did several years ago in a gallery in Los Angeles called the York Gallery. And this is a piece that I composed, has all my friends performing with me, and the only thing that's amplified in this video, in this performance, is the guitar, but everyone else is completely unamplified, including my voice. So if you want to click on the link that I just posted in chat and give me a thumbs up when you're done. Thank you. All right. Looks like several of you saw it. Thank you so much for checking that out. That is an example of what I do performance-wise. And so I only have like about like 5 or 10 minutes, so I am going to move forward with this little presentation here. And here we have a big mound of hair. So this was so I do visual art as well, and as Castles may have mentioned, I do post illustrations roughly like once, like every other night on my Instagram, and it is just an extension of just letting it come out. If it doesn't come out in music or performance, it's coming out visually somehow. This right here was part of the queer biennial, which is about 3 years ago, and it's a piece called Trophy that incorporated just various pieces of white people hair. And I wanted to really present the two things. I wanted to really make a point of how, you know, the hair of, you know, of BIPOC has been objectified for so long, and I wanted to really just turn that around, and, you know, what would happen if we what is the word? What is that word? If we made exotic, if we put an exotic light on the hair of white people, or, you know, or what we perceive to be white people, and it did get some some intense reactions. But then this is around the time when I started really just seeing, like, you know, making that commentary about like the second aspect of it, which was like, you know, the potential of infecting a space. And to me, like, infecting a space, even, you know, predating the times that we're living in now, and what that means is establishing that something took place in a specific gallery space, or really any form of venue, and that the memory of that can no longer be denied or erased. That somehow that space is infected with just any remnant of an occurrence, like almost like the space is traumatized by something that was welcomed into it. And in this situation, you know, I wanted to do that with, you know, with something that is not seen as typically clean, which is like, you know, human hair lying around, and in this, you know, instance, like just, you know, placed on a wooden board. But I became obsessed with, you know, just contextualizing every performance that I did, like in addition to showcasing my fat body and my brown smooth body, really going to the word of objection, and always being grateful for every invitation to present work, but using that time wisely in a way that would express the context in which I have been invited into certain situations, as a way of, you know, how I perceive it as like ticking off a box. You know, like, oh, now we've had, like, you know, a non-binary person of color. We can move on and not have to invest our time and efforts into repeating that because it's already been done. So I decided to really just take that mentality that I feel is quite prevalent in the art world and further investigate it through the infecting of spaces, through performance, and any medium that I would want to work in. So this performance here was called Nodrisics Narcissics, and it was presented last year at the LA Art Show, which is this huge convention, mostly for art dealers and art enthusiasts to come purchase art. And I did this performance for 5 hours, in which I was in this chair with my left breast exposed, and I invited the general public to come and suckle on the breast for as long as they wanted. So they did, and because it was an art opening, people were inebriated and festive in a way that was lending to an even more intense situation. So, and I sang the entire time. I sang for 5 hours straight. as people suckled on my breast. It was a way of just creating a moment that had never occurred before in that space, something that could be perceived as filthy or obscene, but just infecting the space with something that would live on in people's memories and certainly through documentation, but even an energy that I wanted to permeate in the walls of the convention center where this took place. This performance here, keeping with the infection of the space, as a non-binary brown person who's the child of immigrants, was called Infestación Pisos 1, 2 y 3. And this was at the Broad Museum in Los Angeles, in which I came to perform a hex on Jeff Koons's iconic tulips. Jeff Koons, I believe, is someone who is not someone I respect as an artist, someone who has proven to be misogynist, racist, and extremely capitalist. So I wanted to put a hex on this sculpture that people love taking selfies with, and I set out to do that, surrounded by hundreds of people, and that was a good time, had by all, I'd like to think, as I featured my nude body all over the place to infect this very white space, and to perform this hex. And I drew energy from everyone present there to do this. It was a good time. This was a performance I did shortly after that, called Enferma de Mar, which is sick from the sea, where I wanted to infect San Pedro, the city of San Pedro, with my body, with my essence, with my presence. And seeing how necessary this is for my own survival, to say that I was here in the boldest and most unrestrained manner possible. So this is really, in a very tight nutshell, what it is that I've done. And again, I'm extremely grateful for everyone, like, just coming through this little journey with me, because it is just really an ongoing thing. Addressing the K of, well, not the K, why did I say the K? Addressing kindness is the word. To me, that is really just the absolute most important thing in any form of creating, is to be kind. And it's very easy to lose that when we are so lost in, so involved in our own process and our own determination to get a point across. What is it to be kind? And how essential is it to our legacies? And to me, it is extremely essential. And I learned that from my dear friend, performance artist Mariel Carranza. It's important, like, to be kind, where human life comes first. And I try to exercise that, believe it or not, in everything that I do. So with that said, I would like to leave you to end this presentation with one more video that I'm going to post right now in the chat section. And this is really the absolute, like, most representative display of a non-binary fat brown person moving through a white space that is the art world, but proudly holding that space as one in which I deserve to be in, but also opening the space for anyone else who wants to be in this space with me. And that is the kindness, that is the color, that is the change that I'm learning to embrace, and certainly the objection that I have learned to embody. So please click on the link to Corpulencia, and thanks again. Oh, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, so that is what I'm about in a nutshell, and I'm grateful for all of you for giving me this space, and an honor to share this space with you.
Wow, thank you so much, Dorian. That was really powerful. I haven't seen that video yet, and it's really, I want to ask questions, but I'm going to let the students ask questions. I can ask you one-on-one.
Well, Hassels, you can ask the question while the students are loading their questions into the chat.
Sure. So that's clearly filmed here at Human Resources. That must be very recent, right?
That was shortly after the election.
Okay. All right. What was like, and I was wondering about the decision to put things in reverse. I mean, it looks amazing, but what was is it like, yeah, I don't want to even try to read into it. I'm curious to hear you speak to that.
So the idea was to show an actual movement through a white space, and I wanted to just create something that displayed beauty, but in a very referential way to the space itself. Human resources, as you know, is really such a dear space, to our community here in LA, and I've done so many performances there. So many of us in our community have just really felt that space so strongly, and I wanted to really make reference to the space, but just moving through it, and the challenge of doing something that was so technically demanding as a one take performance, moving around, done in reverse, was quite it was really a way for me to challenge to do something I'd never done before, and something so precise that was less about just letting a feeling just escape and capturing that, but rather like something that was very controlled. And to be able to do that with Sebastián Hernandez, who's like my sister and I adore, was really just such an honor. And everyone involved, Sinanji was a director, and Graham Colbean's the cinematographer, and everyone who helped, and it was really just such a dream to create, and we got it in the very last take, so it almost didn't happen in one take. We almost had to make the compromise, but when we finally got it, I still can't believe we did that. Wow, okay, I see. Oh my word. There are questions.
If you want, I can go through them and just ask, and then you don't have to worry about reading them all.
Oh, thank you. That would be great.
And I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to select. I don't know how I will select. There's so many coming in. I've been recently watching your videos, and I think I've watched about a dozen, and it seems like it just must be the tip of the iceberg. And so my question is, and you alluded to this a little bit when you said, let's just go out there and play this together. Talk about your prolific art practice. And, it doesn't seem like you have any of the demons that the rest of us do that keep us from actually making the things we want to make.
Well, I don't know. I think, I think demons are everywhere. I certainly house my share of demons. I think they're perhaps like something that really governs me to this very day is fear. I'm fearful of so many things that perhaps like many people aren't. My greatest fear is death. And I know it's not like a very uncommon fear to have, but there is something like the shark mentality where if you stop, you die. And there is just this fear of stopping, and not just creating for the sake of creating, but rather the fear of not wanting to share something or to express something that is just yearning to break out for for fear that it comes out in the wrong way, for fear that it isn't exactly as you have it in your mind. This practice that we have is, so many creators of, not wanting to tarnish a sketch pad because it's so clean and white, and you want every page to count, when in fact the sketch pad is supposed to be messy. It's supposed to really capture what comes out of you at its most primal, and that's the way that I go about so many things. And it's not just, it's not being messy. It's about accepting truth and allowing that to come out in the way that it's supposed to, but just wanting to feel free of not doing something, of that fear of not doing something, and that fear governs me, and I have no idea why. So there are demons and a half there, though, let me tell you.
Okay. Thank you. A couple questions here that are similar, so I'll merge them. As someone who has never worked in performance art, what advice do you have to those starting? And in conjunction, when you start a piece that might be on the edge of your comfort zone, what do you do to either calm yourself or enter a better headspace?
I think there's just something very important to addressing both questions. I think there's something very important to creating your own world and having that be the foundation that you leap off of. Now we have, like back when I started doing performance, we didn't really have the mediums that we have now to, you can start your own Zoom. You can really have an idea in your mind and invite all your friends to tune in at a certain time, and then you present your work, and it's done, and it existed, and it's out there, and that can be a motivator. Okay, well, I'm going to do something else, and then just falling into that, and just going forward with what you want to do, and not necessarily waiting for the right opportunity or invitation to come for you to do that. But really creating, for me, what's really worked is just really creating my own, my own realm to do that, and my own platform, and seeing that as like always something to fall back on. Well, I can always just do it on my own, type of thing. And then the more you do that, the more self-confidence you start building, and then just, people will notice. And then that's when invitations start coming in, and that's really how I've done my practice my entire adult life. As far as just fears and like putting myself in a specific mindset, I always heed the words of folk singer Malvina Reynolds when she said, when people ask her, where did your inspiration come from? And she said, well, I don't know, but if I knew, I'd go there every day. So to me, it's really that. It's I have no idea. People use, always inappropriately use the word crazy. And to me, it's just really like just being certain about a way that I do things that I know isn't harming me, and just having a very strong and firm belief in that, and going from there.
Excellent, great. Here's a question from a first-year student. In your opinion, is an artist ever equipped to portray a story which is not theirs?
Yes, absolutely. Because what happens is, even like a person, like, anytime you tell a story, it can be like your own or someone else's. You are never the person that you're telling the story of. And to me, that really exemplifies, well, like change, which is something that I try to embody as much and embrace, is that, the person, like if I were, for example, to tell my own story from like 10 years ago, I'm telling it from the perspective of the person that I am now. And an identity and a name, like I'm that same person, but it's really, other than that though, it's a completely different universe. In telling the story of, of others that are not like us at our own origin, to me, there's something very beautiful. And, when we go in the realm of tributes, or in the realm of acknowledgements, or just, self-expression based on the story of someone else, that is, inspiration comes from that. It's a reverence for people that are outside of our own worlds, outside of our own histories. And my belief that we need people around us, not physically all the time, but we certainly need to know that there are people outside of who we are that motivate us, that inspire us, and what better way to pay homage to them than to tell their story, based on like how we perceive it. And I feel like there's just a respectful way of doing everything. Just like, I've learned there's a nice way of saying anything, and to me, it's just really a matter of making sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's when you do that. I guess every circumstance is different, but to answer your question, yes, absolutely. You just know if you are equipped or not, and just go with that.
That is so helpful. Thank you. You described the intention of many of your performances as infecting the environment around you with your own body, but many of your works also include elements of embracing the beauty of your body. Was there a switch from one message to another at a specific point?
There isn't. To me, like this is a very positive infection, which is another term that I use often with my work is a joyous trauma. And I use these terms as a way of not diminishing, the like the negativity that comes with trauma or like with infection as we're living now, but terms that have been used against us, against marginalized communities for so long, as we are the infection, like, we are the ones that just are the worst in this world, that cause trauma, like, just being who we are in existence. And it's owning that. But it's also, as someone who appreciates performance and, all in any appreciation of art and creativity in any way, to me, something that always sticks with me is when I'm hit with something that goes beyond a very general appreciation, when it just shakes me on the inside, when it actually touches something that I've lived. If someone else's work can do that for me, then that stays with me as a trauma would, as an infection would, as it actually like permeates your being. And I strive to do that because I like going out, like, for just a very like, fancy free time of entertainment and like lightheartedness. But what feeds me, which is something more intense and more engaging, is what I want to give back.
That is so beautiful. Thank you, Dorian. Here's a question. Do you ever find yourself having the same insecurities and reservations about showing your body as you did when you were younger, or have you never looked back? How do you think working in the nude benefited your work?
It allowed my body to be a form of like special like outfit, like that one like really just really cute dress, like or just suit that you keep in the back of your closet that makes your ass look amazing. To me, it's really it's that it's somehow like just switching that perspective, and that like, oh well, like my nude body isn't something that I would just show anywhere. It's for special occasions. Not to say that I don't have my moments of insecurity. The same insecurities I had before, though, those do pop up every once in a while. Something I'm very much a proponent of is therapy, and that's really helped me just as much as being an artist has. And many people say, oh well, like art's the only therapy you need, and for me it really wasn't enough. And what I've learned through therapy is that every insecurity that I have has a voice to it. Every voice, every little like, they say the voice in the back of your head that tells you like, you're not good enough, you're fat, you're ugly, you're this, you're that. That has an origin, and there's someone in your past that has said that. Perhaps not in those words, but they've made you feel like that. And something that's really helped me is to identify that person in my history, in my mind. And anytime that voice comes up again, is to be like, okay, that's you, you're so-and-so. why do you get to take the wheel? You're not me. You're so-and-so. So-and-so, you can sit right down. And I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. But you don't get the wheel. So to me, it's really like talking myself and, through a situation like in that manner. And it works most of the time. I mean, we live in a society that still says that my body shouldn't exist and it shouldn't be appreciated in a form of beauty, but rather in a form of either comedy or, as a contrast of what not to do in life. And I have proven otherwise time and time again. And, talking about objection, that is something that I embody as well. Like, literally, like my body is not supposed to exist. My body is not supposed to be seen. And I've been censored enough times to know that my body does cause a reaction and therefore it's meant to be here.
Standing. Dino saw something in you that no one else did, as great mentors do. Do you feel a responsibility to mentor anyone else in return?
To me, like as far as as far as the mentoring that Dino did, it was really more of a friendship. And I'm always very wary of that type of dynamic unless it's something that is mutually sought out. I feel that what I've benefited from mostly in life have been just relationships that are as mutual as possible, in that there is an exchange of experiences and learning. And to me, that's really what feeds me, what has always fed me most. Like I can't really say I look up to anyone as a mentor, really, only my mother at this point. But even still, like to me, like to be a mentor to someone is maybe like one of the reasons why I don't particularly like being a teacher or an instructor for like voice or like music and performance. And I think the reason is that we enter into a realm in which things are corrected, or something is right or something is wrong, and in that I'm constantly learning, even at my age and in my experience. To me, it's like someone else is also learning as well. So I don't feel I would ever be equipped to know more than anyone else to take on that kind of position. And it just really allows me to continue, living in awe and, and being inspired by people. And that is another driving force in me.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. Here's a lighter one. You are incredibly funny, which, by the way, it's hard to do a Zoom presentation to a bunch of just blank names on the screen. I was laughing during the video, so I appreciate your humor, and so do some of the other students here. You're incredibly funny. I was wondering how humor has helped you throughout your career.
It's kept me alive. It has kept me alive. To me, humor is something I feel like I've just been. Well, I mean, we're all constantly learning, and humor is really something that when people like comedians, to me, are really like underestimated as far as the gift that they have. When you're a comedian that is so like universally appreciated because you can make like millions of people laugh, to me that is like, wow, like what is that? That is like divine intervention. That is just being born like with second sight. Like to me that is like you're able to go into people like just en masse and make them like lose their shit, sometimes literally. And that's such a wonderful thing. I don't know if I strive to be a comedian, but I do know that something that keeps me sane, I hate that word sane, something that just really keeps me balanced is not taking a situation that seriously, and not in a way to diminish it, but rather to show just everything that surrounds the seriousness of a piece, the context in which we create. The fact that, like, there is something, like, laughable at, like, just minimalist art installation, for example, like, just garnering so much attention and demanding so much money, for example. Just the seriousness that we attach to so many things. I don't feel like finding comedy and humor in it diminishes anything, but rather it just shows that there is more than one person in the room, and acknowledging that there are, that, any serious, focus on something will create tension. So sometimes tension isn't a comfortable thing. Sometimes.
We have a question coming in from YouTube from Rafa. So I'm going to read it to you. He says, your work has been very influential amongst the performance art community and beyond, especially for us here in Los Angeles. Do you think about the future of cultural production, specifically performance, the ebb and flow, the loudness and quietness of performance, and its overall direction?
I feel like there's something very, like, just profoundly, for lack of a better term, sacred about performance art, in that, unlike really any other branch of creativity, it seems to be really the one that that tends to thrive when it goes against the caging of a genre, or even of a community. Like, there is just something so individualistic about it that is deeply admirable. Excuse me. So whenever, like, I think in terms of just like a greater scale, like even in the terms of industry, I feel like performance art, like, transcends that. And I know people make careers out of that, and I think that really just kind of pushes me in the direction, as I do even with my own practice, of avoiding even, like, just the label of being a performance artist, but rather, like, what would it be like if we just embraced the career of being an individual, of like, oh, I'm no longer a performance artist, now I do this. It's like, well, but you're still you. How about we celebrate you for being the person that can do this and that, or that is no longer doing this but is doing that now, but you are still this person that should be celebrated, type of thing. And that's how I see, like, my favorite artists in the world are the ones that just really don't aren't seeking to thrive in that format, but rather just based on what it is that internally is leading them in any direction. So I'm more about really the thriving of the individual, and that really frees it up to absolutely everyone in this world. So that really kills, like, any elitist pedestal that any form of art, including performance art, can tend to be placed on.
Great. Dorian, we are just a couple of minutes after 8, and you have been so incredibly generous, but I feel like we could go on for hours. Of course we won't, but is there any final thoughts or notes that you want to share with us? Mostly, I don't think I've prefaced this, that most of the students in the class are undergrads. We have many first-year students here in visual arts. Some of them, the performance art is totally new to them. So anything you want to share as a final note?
I would say, well, really just, I've said thank you several times, I think, and I think I can't say thank you enough. Gratitude is really something that I want to share as much as possible, because gratitude keeps us grounded, and not just, gratitude as a gesture or as the polite thing to say, but to really feel grateful for any situation that comes your way, is really going to keep the imagination fueled for the long term. And I know it's worked for me, and I can only always speak for like what's worked for me and what I've, you know, encountered and experienced in my entire life, is to be grateful for you know, any opportunity to elevate your own individual statement. And from that point on, it's you know, you can really go in any direction, and you can be, by the way, you can be objectionable in the platform of gratitude as well. Like, you know, there have been many times when like I will say something very defiant or do something very defiant and be grateful for the opportunity to do that. So I am a firm believer in that, in the nuance of life, in that you don't have to be this or that, and to be grateful for that as well. So
Fantastic. Great parting words. Thank you so much. It's been such a treat to spend the evening with you. Thank you.
thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much, everyone.